It was a dark and stormy night. Well, not really, but it was nighttime. Hello and welcome back to another ThornRose Thursday. In this week's video, I thought I'd try something different. I thought I would share with you guys some photography tips and tricks to do in the nighttime. I am still a beginner with taking photos, so please don't take everything I say to heart or to be perfect. I am still learning to find the perfect scenarios with photography. Again, these are just tips and tricks to help you get started. Hopefully you guys use them and enjoy. Now, all these photos were taken in manual mode. In manual mode, there are three main components. There is shutter speed, there is aperture, and there is ISO. Now, you may know nothing about photography and be asking yourself, what are these three components? Well, let me tell you. Shutter speed is a period of time where the film from inside the camera is exposed to light coming from outside the camera. Aperture is the size of the opening of the lens where light passes through to be able to reach the camera's sensor. The higher the aperture, the smaller the opening of the lens, and the smaller or the lower the aperture, well, it's just the opposite. Like, not much else to say there, it's just the opposite of the higher. And last is the ISO. This is a setting where you want to measure how sensitive your image or the camera sensor is to the light coming from outside the camera coming in. Now, with those three components out of the way, let's get into the main part of this video. I took 5 different night photography styles. I took the stars, the moon, self-portrait, car, and lightning. Those were the 5 different types I took. Lightning is a bit of an iffy one. You have to make sure it is the right type of weather to be able to capture this type of photography or photo, because if you don't, well, you're not going to get it. Style number 1, the stars. For the first photo, I used these for the following settings. I used a shutter speed of 15 seconds, an aperture of f/4 or f4, an ISO of 1600, and a zoom level of 18mm, and this was the result. Style number 2, the moon. Here I used a shutter speed of 1/160, an aperture of f11 or 11 depending on how your camera sees it, and an ISO of 100, the minimum before I got to the automatic setting. At the same time, I used the zoom level of my lens at 300mm. Now, to be able to capture the moon in photos, it is suggested that you use a minimum of 70mm and upwards. In my case, I was lucky enough to have a Canon 70 to 300mm lens. Now, with that out of the way, and in saying that, this is what it looked like. Style number 3, the self-portrait. I kept the shutter speed at the same level as the moon with 1/160, although I did have to turn the aperture down a bit and change it to f4. But I also had to heighten the level of my ISO to 25,600. In saying that, with those 3 settings, this was the outcome. We move on to number 4 now. Number 4 is the car night photography, or car photography in the night. Whatever you want to say, however you want to say it. Yeah, this one probably wasn't the safest one for me to do, as I did do this in the middle of the road on the highway. So please don't do this one by yourself, or don't do it in general unless you are a professional at this or you have someone else there to be able to give you a hand to move out of the way. Myself, I saw a car coming from the other direction and I had to race back into my car and put it back on the right side of the road and put it off the road. So yeah, please don't try this one at home unless you are a professional and you are in a safe environment. Now that we've got that out of the way, these were the settings that I used for this photo. I used a 15-second shutter speed. I used an f/5.6 aperture. Doesn't mean anything, it's just a 5.6 aperture. And I turned my ISO way back down to 1600. Along with that, I did use a 55mm zoom on it, and this is what it looked like. Finally is style number 5. Number 5 is the lightning photography. Now, I was lucky enough to capture this. I didn't really intend to, but I did. This was just an opportunity that I could not pass, as I wanted to be able to do lightning photography for the longest time that I can remember. I did take 2 different photos for this because there were multiple strikes, as it usually happens. So this was for photo number 1. Photo number 1, I had a shutter speed of 15 seconds, an aperture of 4.5 and an ISO of 1600 with a zoom of 30 millimeters. Photo number 2, I kept the shutter speed the same at 15 seconds. I upped the aperture a little bit by 0.5 to make it 5, and I kept the ISO as well at 1600. And I did change the zoom. I zoomed it in a little bit to 34 millimeters, and yeah, between those 2 photos, these are what they look like. Now that the basics of those photos are done, I had to move on to the next part of it. I needed some help from my family. In particular, I got help from my dad.
Christ's sake, woman, will you please shut up?
Don't tell me what to do! I'm your wife, I will fucking do what I want!
Well, I'm just not interested in your opinions.
And I got help from my brother Joshua. Now Josh does his own photography and editing, well, of his own. These are just a couple of examples of his work. Not only does he do it of his car, or for his car, he also does it for his brand Malevolent, and these are a couple of the photos that he has taken. Now please also be sure to check out Malevolent down below, all the links that are there. It would mean a great deal to myself and for him. So after getting some help from my dad and from Josh, getting shown the basics and understanding of how Lightroom works, this is just what each of the photos look like afterwards. So yeah, here you go. Alrighty, so if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you really like it, please subscribe. It just shows me that you like the content that I'm putting out to give you guys. I am trying to do a few different things to be able to see what you guys like in particular. So yeah, if you like it, please like, subscribe. Comment down below which photo you actually thought was best. I want to see what you guys like with them, and if you're going to try some of your own, please let me know. Tag us on Instagram at ThornRose Productions, follow us on Facebook or like us on Facebook. And yeah, until the next ThornRose Thursday, peace.